They called you an angel because it made them comfortable, because it allowed them to explain you without actually understanding you. Because when people don't know where to place something powerful, they soften the label until it feels safe to touch. Angel meant predictable. Angel meant harmless. Angel meant you would keep absorbing, keep forgiving, keep turning pain into patience without ever asking for anything in return. They wrapped that word around you like a compliment, never realizing it was also a cage. They praised your kindness while quietly counting on it. They admired your warmth while leaning into it for cover. They spoke about your goodness the way people speak about resources, something generous, renewable, endlessly available. And for a long time, you let them believe it, not because you were unaware, but because you understood something they didn't. Power doesn't need to announce itself. Power waits. Power watches. Power learns who is safe and who is reckless enough to mistake mercy for permission. What they never considered is that angels, in every story that matters, are not decorations. They are not fragile. They are not gentle by default. They are watchers, enforcers, carriers of judgment when balance is broken. The calm you carried was never emptiness. It was containment. And containment looks peaceful to people who have never felt what's being held back. They mistook your restraint for lack. They mistook your empathy for compliance. They mistook your patience for weakness. And that miscalculation is the reason their world started to feel unstable the moment you stopped playing the role they assigned you. Not because you became cruel, because you became exact. You were never naive. You were observant. You noticed how people relaxed too much around you, how they said things they wouldn't say to others, how they crossed lines with small justifications, testing reactions, measuring tolerance. You noticed how often apologies came after the damage, not before the decision. You noticed patterns long before you acknowledged them, because acknowledging them would have required a choice. And at that stage, you were still choosing to believe that people could rise if given enough understanding. That belief wasn't foolish, it was generous. And generosity is dangerous when offered without limits to people who see kindness as an opening rather than a gift. They didn't attack you outright. They never do. They eroded, they chipped, they leaned. They borrowed your strength while telling themselves they deserved it. They relied on your stability to avoid building their own. They leaned on your clarity so they wouldn't have to face their confusion. And every time you absorbed the impact quietly, every time you smoothed over conflict, every time you chose peace instead of confrontation, they added another unspoken note to their internal file about you. Always there, always understanding, always available. And with each note, they stepped a little closer to the edge. Here's the part they'll never admit to themselves. Your presence protected them. Your insight corrected trajectories they didn't even know were drifting. Your care softened consequences that would have crushed them otherwise. You were absorbing shock they never had to feel. And because they didn't feel it, they assumed it didn't exist. They assumed life was manageable on its own. They assumed they were stronger than they actually were. And that assumption made them careless with the one person quietly holding the structure together. You didn't snap. That fantasy belongs to people who want to feel important in your story. You didn't raise your voice or create scenes that could be used later as justification. You didn't turn into the villain they rehearsed for in private conversations. What happened instead was slower and far more unsettling. Something inside you recalibrated, a line moved. A threshold closed. You stopped explaining yourself to people who never listened unless it benefited them. You stopped offering access where respect was absent. You stopped translating your needs into smaller language so others wouldn't feel threatened by them. And when that shift happened, it wasn't loud, but it was absolute. They felt it immediately, even if they couldn't name it. Conversations changed temperature. Your responses shortened. Your availability narrowed. The emotional safety net they took for granted was suddenly gone, and they didn't know why. They replayed interactions looking for the moment they crossed too far, but there wasn't one dramatic scene to point to. That's what unsettles them most. There was no single mistake to apologize for. There was no clean fix. There was only accumulation, evidence stacked quietly over time, until your nervous system, your mind, your self-respect all agreed on the same conclusion. This connection is no longer sustainable. They started telling each other you changed, that you became distant, that you became cold. Labels are easier than accountability. It's simpler to accuse you of transformation than to examine their behavior under consistent light. They don't want to talk about boundaries. They don't want to talk about respect. They don't want to talk about how many times you were expected to be flexible while they remained rigid. Calling you cold allows them to avoid the more accurate description. You became clear, and clarity feels hostile to people who benefit from confusion. What scares them isn't that you pulled away. It's how calm you were when you did it. There was no desperation to be understood, no urgency to repair, no need to win. That calm signals something final. It tells them you didn't act from emotion. You acted from decision. And decisions, once made at that level, don't reverse because someone feels uncomfortable with the outcome. They can argue with feelings. They can negotiate reactions. They can wait out moods. They cannot bargain with someone who has already finished the internal math. They are slowly realizing that your goodness was never a blank check. It was an offering that required mutual care. And when that care was absent, the offering expired. They are realizing that the warmth they miss wasn't automatic. It was a response. It was something you chose to generate in environments where it was respected. And now that it's gone, they feel exposed. Not because you harmed them, but because they are finally standing in the reality you buffered them from. This is where the misunderstanding deepens. They think your shadow appeared recently. They think something dark entered you. They think pain turned you into something else. They are wrong. The shadow they sense now was always there. It's the part of you that sees clearly, the part that doesn't flinch from truth, the part that understands consequence. You kept it restrained because you believed connection mattered more than control. But restraint is not erasure, and once restraint is no longer justified, what was contained becomes visible. Not explosive, visible. Your shadow doesn't destroy. It exposes. It highlights inconsistencies. It removes access. It withdraws support without announcement. And that terrifies people who relied on you without ever securing their place in your life through consistency and respect. They're discovering that losing you isn't dramatic. It's disorienting. Life feels heavier. Decisions feel riskier. Problems feel sharper. And they don't know how to articulate why, because admitting the truth would mean admitting how much of themselves was propped up by someone they treated as expendable. You are not watching them struggle with satisfaction. That's not your nature. But you are also no longer intervening. You are no longer stepping in to soften landings. that aren't yours to manage. And that absence is doing what confrontation never could. It's allowing reality to respond without your interference. It's allowing people to meet the results of their own patterns. And deep down, they know it's fair. That's the part that keeps them awake, not guilt, recognition. They remember moments now with a different lens, things they brushed past, words they dismissed, boundaries they ignored because you didn't enforce them loudly. They are connecting dots too late. And while they replay, you are building. You are redirecting energy that was once spent maintaining imbalance into something aligned. Your focus has shifted from managing others to protecting what you're creating. And that shift is irreversible. They used to think your presence meant safety. Now they realize it also meant accountability. You reflected back what was possible. You represented a standard they never committed to meeting. And instead of rising, they tried to lower you. Instead of learning, they tried to lean. Instead of protecting the connection, they exploited its generosity. And when exploitation meets awareness, access ends, not as punishment, as correction. They will try to reframe the story. They will search for angles where they are misunderstood or unlucky or wronged. That's how they survive discomfort. But the narrative doesn't need your participation anymore. You're not invested in being seen correctly by people who benefited from seeing you incorrectly. You are invested in coherence, in alignment, in building a life that doesn't require you to shrink parts of yourself to maintain proximity. This is where the truth they avoid begins to surface. You were never just kind. You were disciplined. You were never just patient. You were perceptive. You were never just forgiving. You were choosing peace until peace required self-erasure. And when that line was crossed, something ancient and precise stepped forward. Not anger, authority, the kind that doesn't need validation. They sense it now. The thing they labeled angel was only half the equation. The other half was always there, watching, learning, waiting for the moment when remaining gentle would mean becoming complicit in your own diminishment. That moment passed quietly, and with it, the version of you they relied on without earning. What followed wasn't withdrawal out of spite. It was repositioning, the kind that happens when someone finally understands their own weight and refuses to carry anyone who keeps pretending it's light. You didn't announce it. You didn't explain it. You didn't demand recognition for the shift. You simply stopped offering access where respect was missing, and that absence began doing work words never could. At first, they assumed it was temporary, a phase, a mood. People who benefit from consistency without reciprocity always believe distance is negotiable. They waited for you to soften, to reach out, to reoccupy the space you once filled so effortlessly. They told themselves you were tired, distracted, busy, anything but done, because accepting that you were finished would require accepting that you reached that point because of them. And that's a weight most people refuse to carry. So they waited. And while they waited, life began to press harder. The problems you used to absorb started landing directly on them. The confusion you once clarified, they stayed unresolved. The emotional support they borrowed freely was no longer available on demand. And slowly, discomfort replaced confidence. They started noticing the difference in how rooms felt without you, not in a dramatic way, in a subtle one. Conversations lost depth. Decisions felt less grounded. Tension lingered longer. They felt exposed without knowing why, because you were never just present. You were regulating energy. You were stabilizing dynamics. You were holding standards quietly by embodying them. And when that embodiment left, what remained had no reference point. People who never built internal structure felt it first. They struggled the most. They reached outward for something to lean on and realized the place you used to stand was empty. This is where the rewriting begins. They look back and start editing memory. They minimize what you gave. They exaggerate what they think you took. They search for moments where they can paint themselves as patient, generous, misunderstood. This isn't malice, it's self-preservation. Their identity depends on not being the kind of person who drains someone like you. So they tell stories that soften edges, that blur responsibility, that make your decision seem sudden rather than cumulative. But those stories don't sit well with them. They don't fully believe their own versions. And that internal friction shows up in restlessness, irritability, distraction. Something is unresolved, and they can feel it. They also start comparing, quietly. They watch how others respond to you now, how your energy is focused, how your presence is deliberate, how you invest differently. And they realize something unsettling. You didn't stop being generous. You became precise. You didn't stop caring. You redirected care toward environments that could hold it without collapsing. That realization stings because it confirms what they tried to deny. The distance wasn't random, it was selective. And that selectivity feels like judgment, even when no words are spoken. What they don't understand yet is that your decision wasn't about them at all. It was about coherence, about living without contradiction, about aligning your actions with the truth your body learned through repetition. You reached a point where continuing to show up required you to override your own signals. And once someone learns to trust those signals, ignoring them becomes impossible. The cost is too high, the dissonance too loud. So you adjusted. An adjustment always looks like rejection to people who expected permanence without responsibility. They replay interactions now, searching for the exact moment everything shifted. They think it must have been something specific they said or did. They want a single scene they can isolate, but there isn't one. That's the part that unsettles them most. The shift wasn't triggered by a moment. It was triggered by consistency, by patterns repeating after being addressed, by apologies followed by the same behavior, by promises made to ease tension rather than to initiate change. You didn't leave because of one betrayal. You left because you understood the structure you were standing in was never going to change, no matter how much effort you poured into reinforcing it. While they analyze the past, you are adjusting to a new internal quiet. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of strain. Your nervous system is recalibrating to an environment that doesn't require constant vigilance. Your mind has more space. Your decisions come easier. You notice how much energy was previously spent anticipating reactions, managing expectations, smoothing edges that weren't yours to smooth. That energy is returning to you now, and with it comes clarity about what you will never normalize again. They sense this clarity when they encounter you, even indirectly. There's a steadiness that wasn't there before. Not softer, stronger, more contained. You're not performing warmth to make others comfortable. You're not adjusting tone to avoid discomfort. You're present as you are, and that presence creates a contrast they can't ignore. They feel measured without being measured, assessed without being assessed. Because when someone knows their own boundaries, everything else reveals itself automatically. Some of them feel anger toward you. That's inevitable. Distance threatens entitlement. They feel wronged because they lost access without consent. They feel abandoned because they never acknowledged how much they were taking. They frame your choice as disloyalty, coldness, arrogance. Those labels help them avoid the deeper truth. That you stayed longer than you should have. That you gave more than was sustainable. That you left only after understanding that staying would mean betraying yourself. Anger is easier than humility, so they choose anger. Others feel something closer to regret, not the kind that leads to change, but the kind that lingers. They recognize that you were rare, that your presence made life easier in ways they never fully appreciated. They realize that the ease they enjoyed wasn't accidental. It was cultivated by someone who cared deeply and worked quietly. Losing that feels like losing a safety net they assumed would always be there. And the realization that it's gone permanently sits heavy. They will attempt contact, carefully at first. Casual messages, indirect references, shared memories. Anything that tests whether the old door still opens. They won't address the real issues, not yet. They'll lead with familiarity, hoping emotional history will override your clarity. But familiarity without respect no longer moves you. You see it for what it is. A reach for comfort, not accountability. And you respond accordingly, polite, neutral, limited. Enough to confirm the shift without explaining it. This is when the narrative changes again. They tell themselves you've become distant because you think you're better than them, because success changed you, because someone else influenced you. External explanations are comforting. They allow them to believe the distance isn't about their behavior. But none of those explanations stick, because deep down, they know the truth. They know how many chances they were given. They know how often you communicated with care. They know how many times they dismissed concerns because it was easier than adjusting. And that knowledge sits beneath every excuse, quietly undermining it. You don't engage in correcting their story. That's another thing they struggle to understand. You don't defend yourself. You don't clarify. You don't seek to be seen accurately by people who refuse to see you when it mattered. That choice unsettles them more than confrontation ever could, because it signals something final. It signals that their opinion no longer holds weight in your internal economy, and losing relevance feels worse than losing connection. What's happening beneath all of this is simple. Your shadow is doing its job, not by attacking, but by filtering, by distinguishing between what is aligned and what is not, by allowing consequences to exist without interference, by refusing to dilute truth to preserve comfort. That shadow isn't dark in the way they imagine. It's discerning, it's protective, it's loyal to your well-being in a way your previous self struggled to be. And once that loyalty is established, it doesn't waver. They are learning that access to you was never guaranteed. It was sustained by mutual care. And when that care disappeared on their end, the structure collapsed. They can feel the loss, but they can't undo it. Because undoing it would require becoming someone capable of holding you without exploiting you. And that kind of change doesn't happen in response to loss. It happens in response to truth. A truth they avoided for too long. As time passes, the distance becomes normalized. They stop reaching out as often. Not because they've healed, but because the absence has settled into reality. You become a reference point rather than a presence, someone they think about occasionally, usually when something goes wrong, someone they mention in passing, often with a tone that blends admiration and resentment. You occupy a strange space in their mind. proof of what they had access to once, evidence of what they lost by refusing to grow. Meanwhile, your life continues to organize itself around alignment. New connections form differently, slower, more intentional. You don't rush intimacy, you observe consistency. You notice how people respond to boundaries. You pay attention to whether respect shows up without being requested. And because you're no longer overextending, you have the capacity to notice these things clearly. You're not distracted by the urge to fix or save or carry. You're present. They notice your steadiness from afar, the way you move without explaining, the way you build without broadcasting, the way you no longer seek approval. And that steadiness feels threatening to people who rely on chaos to avoid accountability. They don't know how to approach you anymore. The old scripts don't work. The old leverage is gone. You're not angry enough to manipulate and not needy enough to exploit. You exist outside their strategies now. There is a moment, usually alone, when they fully understand what happened. Not emotionally, intellectually. They realize that your kindness was paired with awareness the entire time. That you weren't unaware of what they were doing. You were simply giving them space to choose better. And when they didn't, you chose yourself. That realization doesn't come with relief. It comes with something heavier. Acceptance. They accept that you are no longer available in the way you once were. That the version of you who absorbed without limit is gone. That what remains is someone who values precision over generosity, truth over harmony, alignment over proximity. And that acceptance marks the end of their confusion. There's nothing left to analyze, nothing left to fix. Just a quiet understanding that a door closed because it needed to. You don't feel victorious. You feel grounded. You don't feel vengeful. You feel intact. The power you stepped into doesn't require witnesses. It doesn't require acknowledgement. It simply reorganizes your life around what is sustainable. And sustainability, once tasted, becomes non-negotiable. They called you an angel because they only saw the part of you that made their lives easier. They never learned what existed beneath that. And now, as the distance holds and the implications deepen, they are beginning to understand that what they lost wasn't softness. It was protection. It wasn't warmth. It was structure. It wasn't generosity. It was discernment disguised as mercy. And as that understanding settles, something else begins to form, something that will become impossible for them to ignore as time moves forward, and the contrast between who you've become and what they remain grows sharper, heavier, more undeniable, leading directly into the final realization they've been avoiding all along. That realization is simple, but devastating. You were never meant to stay. You were never meant to carry them indefinitely. You were the measure they failed to rise to, and now that measure stands outside their reach, unchanged, unmoved, no longer available for comparison or comfort. This is the part where their defenses stop working, where distraction loses effectiveness, where excuses thin out and repetition exposes itself. They begin to feel the full weight of your absence not as loss, but as exposure. Without you present to stabilize as dynamics, they must face themselves without buffer. And many of them don't like what surfaces. They notice how reactive they are, how inconsistent, how quickly they collapse under pressures you once absorbed without acknowledgement. They notice how often conflict escalates without your calming influence, how unresolved issues linger longer, how small problems grow teeth. And somewhere in that recognition, an uncomfortable truth emerges. You weren't just helping, you were holding things together. They remember how easy it felt when you were around, not because life was perfect, but because it was manageable, because there was someone who listened fully, someone who anticipated needs before they were spoken, someone who responded with care instead of calculation. They thought that ease was normal, that it existed naturally. They didn't realize it was being generated deliberately by someone who understood the cost of neglect and chose to intervene anyway. And now that intervention is gone, and ease doesn't return on its own. They try to replicate what you provided. They look for it in others. They seek new connections, new supports, new arrangements. But it doesn't work the same, because what you offered wasn't a role anyone could step into. It was a function of who you were, of your awareness, of your restraint, of your willingness to remain grounded while others spun. And that combination isn't common. It can't be replaced quickly, or cheaply, or at all. This is where resentment hardens, not loud resentment, quiet resentment. The kind that turns admiration into bitterness. They don't hate you. They resent what you represent. They resent that you existed at all, because your existence highlighted their shortcomings. They resent that you walked away without collapsing, that you didn't need them the way they needed you, that your life continued to expand while theirs felt increasingly confined. And that resentment feeds a story where you are framed as distant, ungrateful, changed, anything but accurate. But accuracy isn't required anymore. Your life no longer revolves around correcting perception. You understand something now that took time to learn. Being misunderstood by people who benefited from misunderstanding you is not a failure. It's a release. It frees you from the obligation to perform. It frees you from the burden of explanation. It frees you to live in alignment rather than defense. And that freedom is something they can sense even if they can't articulate it. They watch from afar as you move differently, as you choose carefully, as you invest selectively, as you build with intention. There's no urgency in you now, no scramble to prove value, no rush to secure belonging. You know where you stand with yourself. And that internal certainty changes everything. It affects posture, tone, timing. It affects what you tolerate and what you don't. It affects how quickly you disengage when something feels off. You no longer wait for confirmation that harm is coming. You trust recognition. They begin to realize that your shadow was never something to fear. It was something to respect. It was the part of you that noticed patterns early, that saw through inconsistencies, that understood when kindness was being used as leverage rather than appreciated as care. You kept that part restrained because you believed connection deserved patience. But patience without mutual effort becomes self-neglect. And once you recognized that line had been crossed too many times, restraint no longer made sense. What they lost wasn't your kindness. It was your availability. And availability is a privilege, not a guarantee. It's extended when there is reciprocity. It's withdrawn when there is entitlement. You didn't punish them by leaving. You corrected an imbalance. And correction always feels unfair to the side that benefited from imbalance. They think about reaching out again. Some of them rehearse messages they never send. Others send them and receive polite distance in return. That distance communicates more than confrontation ever could. It tells them they no longer occupy the position they once did, that whatever they had with you has expired, not because time passed, but because respect didn't deepen. And expiration without drama feels colder than rejection. It leaves no room for negotiation. They ask themselves what they could have done differently. The answers surface quickly, but they push them away. Because those answers require accountability. They require admitting that your needs were clear, that your boundaries were reasonable, that your patience was generous, and that ignoring those things was a choice. Choices have consequences, and consequences don't negotiate. Meanwhile, you are not standing still. You are integrating everything you learned. You are refining your standards. You are becoming more precise with your energy. You understand now that love without structure leads to erosion, that care without boundaries invites misuse, that empathy without discernment becomes self-sacrifice, and you refuse to repeat that cycle. Not because you are hardened, because you are awake. You still care deeply, but care no longer overrides self-respect. You still give. But you give where giving is received with responsibility. You still connect, but you connect where consistency exists. And that recalibration changes the quality of everything you touch. Your relationships feel cleaner. Your work feels clearer. Your inner world feels steadier. There is less noise, less internal debate, less second-guessing. You move with intention now. They sense that intention when they think of you. They sense that you are no longer accessible in the ways they understood, that they can't rely on history to reopen doors, that nostalgia doesn't carry weight where alignment is absent, and that realization marks the true end of the connection. Not anger, not conflict, acceptance. They accept that you were never meant to stay small enough to accommodate their comfort, that your growth was always going to outpace their willingness to adapt, that the distance was not a betrayal, but an outcome, and that outcome was shaped by choices made repeatedly, often casually, often without reflection. And now those choices have landed. This is the moment where the lesson locks in, where the narrative stabilizes, where they understand that pushing someone like you doesn't result in explosion. It results in removal. And removal is permanent because it is rational. You didn't leave to teach them a lesson. You left because staying was no longer honest. And honesty, once prioritized, doesn't retreat. They may tell stories about you for years. Some will speak of you with admiration, others with resentment. Some will rewrite history to place themselves closer to your light than they ever were. But none of those stories reach you. You are not listening. You are not checking. You are not invested. Your focus has shifted forward toward what you are building, toward who you are becoming, toward environments that meet you with equal presence. You were never meant to be understood by everyone. You were meant to be aligned with yourself. And that alignment has cost you access to people who only valued parts of you. But it has given you something far more valuable: integrity. The ability to stand fully in who you are without fragmentation, without apology, without dilution. They finally understand that calling you an angel was convenient because it erased your complexity. It allowed them to enjoy your care without respecting your power. But power was always there, not loud, not aggressive, quiet, controlled, observant. And when control is paired with clarity, it becomes unshakable. You don't need them to acknowledge this. You don't need closure. You don't need validation. The work is complete. The shift has settled. You stand where you stand because it is correct, because it reflects what you know, because it honors what you endured, and because it protects what you are becoming. They thought heaven was harmless. They didn't realize it also contains judgment, not the kind that condemns, but the kind that discerns, the kind that separates what is aligned from what is not, the kind that closes doors quietly and permanently. And now they live with the result of misjudging that. You were never their reward. You were their opportunity. And opportunities don't wait forever. They pass. They move on. They become inaccessible once ignored for too long. And that is what you are now. Inaccessible to those who only saw what you gave and never considered what it cost you. This is not revenge. This is resolution. This is the natural conclusion of awareness meeting repetition. This is what happens when someone refuses to shrink again. When someone chooses coherence over connection. When someone understands that walking away can be the most self-respecting act available. You are not their angel anymore. You are your own authority. And that authority doesn't need permission. It doesn't seek approval. It doesn't linger where it is not valued. It moves forward. It builds. It selects. And it leaves behind those who mistook patience for permanence. They will carry the lesson quietly. They will remember you at moments that matter. And in those moments, they will understand exactly what they lost. Not with bitterness, with clarity. And that clarity will stay with them long after you have disappeared from their daily lives. You remain intact, focused, grounded, fully aware of your capacity and your limits. You carry both light and shadow with discipline. You know when to extend care and when to withdraw. You know when to stay and when to leave. And that knowledge is what makes you untouchable. They called you an angel. They never saw the full picture. Now they never will.